Oh, come on. What's up, everybody? From Walmart. We're back. We're back, baby, again. Not a bad fish right there, guys. Oh, no. Out here catching Folsom bass right now, dude. Woo, he's a little chunker. What up, what up, what up? 'Tis I, again, Dave Erkey, the host of the Whole Angler Podcast. How are you guys doing? I just wanted to stop and say I am really excited about this episode. I feel like I'm going to learn so much of stuff that I've been excited to learn about this for a while. I've been reading on it, and oh man, this guest, I'm really pumped up. I'm really excited, and I hope you guys are too. First off, I would like to say thank you to the Kayak Adventure Series for being a sponsor of the StreamYard and the show, man. Like, love you guys over there. And Broodstock 2 is coming. It's coming. I think it's a week and a half away, if I remember right. I haven't looked at the schedule lately. I've been kind of upside down in life, to be honest, everybody. And I will not be there. I'm really upset that I'm not going to be there, but I'm really excited for the mid-September for you guys to be out there on the Allegheny and having an adventure. Stoked for you guys. Locally, the West Coast Championships just closed up, and the last Yakabass just happened. It was really cool. I'm really excited for everybody there. Shout out to all the winners. And also, I would like to say, keep in your minds and in your prayers, if you pray, our buddy JT Hickman, my buddy Eric from Ohio, and my unnamed friend, all are healing, but until they're out the woods and we see them back out in social medias and living the dream again, I just want you to keep them in your thoughts, man. It's a struggle in life right now for some people. So one more sponsor, these guys. What up, dudes and dudettes? I'm sure you're tired of hearing my voice by now, but you're going to hear it for a little bit longer because this is a shout out to the sponsor of this show, Kayak City. Kayak City has been taking care of me ever since I started getting into a boat and paddling around in the water trying to catch some fish. And when I tell you it is Kayak City, it is literally like a city of kayaks. They have Bonafide, Eddy Line, Feel Free, Hobie, Jackson, Native, New Canoe, Old Town, Wilderness Systems, and so many used kayaks. I stopped trying to count them a long time ago. If you guys are looking for accessories, they have walls and walls and walls of accessories. They have one wall dedicated specifically to Yak Attack, and it is a massive wall. Kayak City is your #1 Yak Attack dealer here in Northern California. If you want to know where it is, stop by at 7812 Auburn Boulevard, Citrus Heights, CA. Roll through, say what up to James, Troy, Eric, Scott. Tell them Dave says what's up and tell them I sent you there. Thanks for listening. And I got a thumbs up on the Apple. And one more thing, I stole my wife's comfort cup today to fill it up with my Element. So if you guys are interested in Element, go to my Instagram at the Whole Angler Podcast on Instagram. And there is a code in my bio. You can get yourself some electrolytes, get yourself out there in the water. It is hot, guys. It's hot all over the country. There's no reason to be dehydrated when they have electrolytes like this at your fingertips. Go ahead and go check it out if you guys are interested. If not, don't be salty, be watery, and just make sure you drink plenty of water. I just don't want anybody going down because of the sun and the heat. So having said all that, and like I said before, I am extremely excited to bring you guys this guest tonight. This was one of those emails I shot out in the dark, and I never thought I'd get a response, and he responded, and it has been a wonderful email chain going back and forth, and he is a great guy to have on here, and just a great guy in general. I bring to you Dr. Stuart Vyse.
Hey, Dave. How you doing?
Doing good, man. How are you?
Good. Glad to be here.
Dude, I'm super excited that you are here. Like, extremely excited. So it's like getting to meet one. I've been following your work as of recent in the last year or so, and I'm just really getting to it. And so I can't wait to get that second book and get moving. So I'm really excited. So let's go ahead and talk about you real quick. Doctor, can I call you Dr. Vyse or Stuart?
You
or how
can
do you
call me
to...
Stuart. You can call me Stuart, please.
Cool.
That would be
Thanks.
easier. I do have a doctorate, but just call me Stuart.
All right. So Stuart, I brought you on. You are a behavioral psychologist or scientist? Right. Okay. So both, even better. So let's talk. How did you get into that? Well, before you got into that, what brought you to think that that would be an interesting topic to tackle in life? Like, how did you get into it? You know?
Yeah, so it's interesting. When I went to college, my mother told me I should be a psychology major, and I did take a few courses in psychology. And believe it or not, eventually I said, this is really boring, and I quit, and I became an English major. And I did a couple of degrees in English. I enjoyed reading books, but there was no job at the end of that line for me. And eventually, what did it was that I started working with autistic kids, fairly severely disabled autistic kids, using behavioral psychology, which I had to learn on the job. And then I got interested in it, and I said, I want to go back and, actually study how this stuff, was determined and how it works. And so I went back to graduate school and got a degree in psychology. And I didn't work after I got, and my main job was as a college professor. So I didn't really work with, helping people in any way afterwards. I did research on how people who are, typical people, why they do the things they do, their behavior. And that's what ultimately led me to superstition. But it was working with those kids first that got me back to graduate school, and eventually, onto the topic of superstition.
Oh, awesome. So, and
it also, by the way, tells you that my mother was right in the first place,
I love it. Yeah. There's been a rare times in my life where I look back and thought and remember that my mom was wrong in the first place, just to say that. I can relate. Okay. So how, before college, what was your life like? Like, how did you, first off, not every kid grows up and like gets to go to college. So,
Right.
how did that whole direction start for you? Like, where and when were you born?
Well, I was born in Evanston, Illinois. I grew up in my early years in a suburb of Chicago. Evanston is a north suburb, but I grew up in a south suburb called Park Forest, Illinois. Middle class town. My father did have a low level white collar job. My mother was a homemaker. But they got divorced, and my mother had dropped out of college to support my father. They met at the University of Illinois, and my mother had dropped out of school to support him so that he could finish his degree. After the divorce, she went back and finished hers. And so in high school, I grew up in a university town. I grew up in Urbana, Illinois, where the University of Illinois is. And so I think that probably had a lot to do with my wanting to go to college and ultimately becoming a college professor. I went to state schools for the most part. I went to Southern Illinois University for undergrad, and I got my PhD at the University of Rhode Island. I had moved east by then. And, so I would say that we were an upper middle class family. But we were also, my mother was raising us on her own. And so, it was a fine childhood. I don't have any complaints whatsoever. But that, I think the living in the university town was a big influence on me. I saw what that lifestyle was like. My mother had friends who were professors and so on. So,
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, and that's not, like you said, like not much to complain about. Like, that sounds like a really awesome place to be raised. Like,
it
college
was.
town where there's like all the younger cats coming and going, and they're all learning how to live life. I was talking about this a show past about a college experience and like how it sets younger people up to have real life experience. It's like practice real life, so you get to see that kind of stuff go on, and then you get to see college professors and stuff living there. They're like, they're like, oh my gosh, there goes a professor, like walking across campus. Right. You're like, damn, I'm gonna be that. Like, that's cool. Yeah.
No, it was great. I also one memory I can share is that the University of Illinois football team, of which Dick Butkus was a player at that time. He later went on to be he later went on to play with the Bears. But as a local kid, you could I think it was $2. It was either $1 or $2. on the day of the game, you could buy a ticket, and you would have to sit on the end. Like it was a U-shaped thing, so you were in one end zone, right end of the stadium, huge Memorial Stadium, and but the rule was that once there was the kickoff, you could go and find any empty seat and watch the game. And so my friends and I often would mow lawns on Saturday morning, and which would earn me the money, and then we would go off to the football game. It was great, really fun.
That's rad. Do you remember ever scoring any seats where you're like, this is the 50-yard line, like this is the best?
Oh yeah, I mean there were games where people didn't show up for their seats, and so yeah, we got great seats on a number of occasions. Once in a while we had to stay in the end zone, but it was still fun. It was an enormous stadium, quite a spectacle.
Dude, that's so cool, man. Oh, so okay, so you're growing up, you get motivated to get into college. You're into college. You said you're working with autistic children. Now, was that like part of like a job, a side job, or
It was
that
a job? No,
okay.
it was a full-time job. I was sort of a treatment worker for a school in Providence, Rhode Island, which is not far from where I am now. And it was quite an experience. It was tough work, but it was a really great experience. A lot of young people, and I learned a lot. And so that's why I wanted to go back. I became interested in the science behind what we were doing, and I wanted to know how that worked. I have always had, despite the English major thing and everything, I've always had an interest in science, and from a young age, and so this seemed like a natural thing, and it does seem to have worked out.
Yeah, no, so you're speaking my heart. I talk to people a lot, and people are always like, why are you so interested in whatever? I'm like, honestly, I'm interested in like how the mind is developed. Like I want to know the reason of the thought, how you got that thought process to where you got, I
Right.
find that super interesting. My wife, she worked with autistic kids, but she worked with more high functioning autistic children, like in like a small school setting out here in Sacramento for a long time before she got her full teaching. All her credentials, her master program was completed, so she became a teacher. But before that, she was working with autistic children, and she would tell me some of the behaviors, and I was like, well, why did he do that, or why is it that way? Like, why can't I just or why can't you just look him in the eyes and talk to him? And she's like, I don't know all of it, but I know that it's just not really good for him. It really stresses him out. I'm like,
Yeah.
Why? I just want to know where in the brain, like, yeah, I just.
Right.
But at the same time, she said some of those kids are smarter than most adults walking around. I was like,
right. No, I mean, I really enjoyed the work. I mean, and we all, in this case, they were tougher kids, and many of them were nonverbal. Some of them were violent. And as a result, most of the workers were quite young, because it wasn't a job for older folks. And so there was a nice, bonding experience for people who had just gotten out of college or were of our age. And so I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, dude. And that's kind of what sparked you going back to school to start delving into the mind. Like, where did you start? Like, for people who are like interested in this kind of stuff, where did you start? Like, did you just say, hey, I want to be a psychologist, here's what we're going to do, or did they kind of?
Yeah. So the deal is that the work that I did was what they call applied behavior analysis, which is, by the way, for the more severe kids with autism, it is one of the most popular and effective therapies. So a lot of the original work, laboratory work that led up to that, was done with animals, was done with pigeons or rats in Skinner boxes. And so that's what I did initially. I later went on to do some laboratory learning experiments on a computer with young kids who had hyperactivity. But using, it's all sort of like reinforcement based learning things. All that's the theme throughout the whole thing. And I was interested in that and still am. And I found it a great experience to get into the science.
Yeah. So what drew you in further towards like where basically you are one of the leading authors on right now, which is superstition? Where does that fall in this whole like I want to be a psychologist, and then behavioral sciences is really interesting, and then where did superstition really like pluck your cord, for instance?
Well,
Like,
it all fits together. So it turns out that one of the famous psychologists who's worked with pigeons on reinforcement is a guy named B.F. Skinner. You may have heard the name,
mm-hmm.
and he's no longer around. But he one of his most famous experiments is called superstition in the pigeon. And the way it worked was that he would have a hungry bird. He would deprive them of food for a couple of hours.
Mm-hmm.
Bird would be in a chamber, a cage, and what he would do is to provide the bird every 15 seconds or so with about a second or two opportunity to eat some grain. Right? They eat grain mostly, mm-hmm. And so he had a little hopper that would, operate, and the grain would be available. The bird would eat, mm-hmm. and it was just happening on a clock every 15 seconds. The bird had no control over it. It just happened. But what Skinner saw was that each of the birds would develop some kind of idiosyncratic movement, like it would bob its head up and down, or some would turn around in circles. But it looked as though the bird believed that whatever it was doing brought the food, right? In fact, it was an accident. There was some kind of coincidence. The bird was doing something, the food came, so the bird does it again, and so before you know it, you've got a habit built. But the habit in this case, not connected with the food at all, with the operation of the food at all. So he called that superstition in the pigeon. He called that because it was, one of the cases of, and this is something that you can relate to, is what we would call a personal superstition, where you perform some action, you wear a certain shirt or hat, and suddenly, you have a great day on the water, and suddenly that's your lucky hat, or an action, like I patted my head before casting, and
yeah.
I'm making this up. I don't know if this is relevant.
No, you're making it. You sounded right. You're sounding right. Yeah.
And so suddenly that becomes a habit, even though the action doesn't have any real connection to the outcome. You're making the connection in your mind, but it's just a coincidence. It's one of those things.
Yeah, I was actually I was talking about this with a group of guys the other day. I'm sure if you haven't listened, it's pretty entertaining. We all they had a great time. But it sounds like you're falling under the behavioral conditioning. Is that what that would be defined as?
That's right.
Okay,
that's right.
So and for those,
and that's how I started. That's the first thing I started with, and I did actually do some simple experiments myself with college students on computers, where I got them to, using it was like a simple video game, mm-hmm. and they didn't know how to get points. They had to experiment with it to get points. And, the reality was that it was on a schedule. It was just random. And there was nothing they could do to make more points come, but they developed all these bizarre theories about, what it was. One person said, you have to press the buttons really slowly, or else you don't get any points, which had nothing to do with anything. Yeah. Right? But it seemed to work for them. And so they developed superstitious beliefs.
That's awesome. So you were like, here's a video game. You guys crack the code. Let me know what you come up with. Is that how that went down? Right.
Yeah, it was really simple too. It was just like left and right presses on the keyboard. A certain number of them would get a point. But the thing is that it had a matrix, and which allowed them to go in all different directions, right? Any of them would work as long as they went from one corner to the opposite corner. You would get a point if it was scheduled, right?
Yes.
But they ended up developing all these patterns. They said, oh, you have to go 2 down and 3 across, and so on. And none of that really mattered at all.
That's so awesome. So in that, where you started delving in with students and computers, What did you find out of all of that that really like struck you to dive deeper? Was it the fact that they each came up with something different, or was it just like, the
Well,
question
I mean,
itself?
it's sort of a straightforward career-like question, which is that, which was that I published a couple of, journal articles, as one does as a
Mm-hmm.
psychologist. I published a couple of articles in journals on this topic, and then I was interested in it, and then I looked around and realized that no one had written a book on it for years, for a long time, and a lot had happened in the meantime.
Yeah.
So it was more of a case like, I'm interested in this topic, people are interested in this topic, and so why don't I take on the task of writing a book? And so that meant I had to, obviously my own research was only a tiny fraction of the book. I had to rely on what other people had done, and it was quite different and so forth. But that is how, this book, Believing in Magic: The Psychology of Superstition, was first born. And that was my first. This is a newer edition, but that was my first book that I wrote.
I do. Yes. And I cannot wait to get that on my desk. I'm super excited. And you gave me the heads up ahead of time. So if you guys are actually looking for this book or you're interested in this topic, this is an awesome read, by the way, because I've read his other book and it was a shorter book and it was rad. So the 2013 paperback copy is the best one to get right now. So go out and grab it.
Yeah, it's listed as an updated edition.
Yes. Yeah. So okay. And so when you went into writing that and you were going through all sorts of different content from everybody, right? What did you find? Did you find situations in your own life where you had superstition, or being in this field was like it kind of like nulled it for you? Like you realized that it was there's no, it's all placebo.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the answer is that, I have been a very rational person my whole life. So I'm not superstitious, and never have been. And that's just, I think, the kind of person I am in general. I'm a science-minded, rational, logical kind of person, and superstition is not logical. I mean, it makes sense in a certain way, but it's not, in terms of cause and effect, it's not logical. I will say this, though, and I do think that like everybody's susceptible, right? Because under the right circumstances, and I've told this story many times, but you haven't heard it yet, so I'll tell you.
Yeah.
But I, for a period of my life in my 20s or so, I was very nervous about turbulence in airplanes, flying through turbulence.
Yeah.
And
my wife is still, don't trip.
Yeah. I mean, it's a thing, right?
Yeah, it is. It is.
So anyway, I was actually coming back from a psychology conference with a colleague, another psychologist, and we're sitting together in the airplane. I mean, it is, I'm kind of white knuckling it through this turbulence, right? and he knows that, and so he doesn't care. He's like, he's fine. I hated that, but he turned to me and said, "Stuart, by the way, did you notice we're in the 13th row of the airplane?" Oh, yes. And I looked down and it was true. We were in the 13th. And he also said, "And by the way, look out the window. There's a full moon out there." This actually happened to me. This actually happened. It was a night flight. Yeah. And for a moment, for half a moment, I was even more, tense than I normally would be. But then it did occur to me that if the plane goes down, all the rows are going down, not just the 13th row. And so I caught myself, and it was okay. But it just shows that even somebody who's very scientific minded and so forth, under the right circumstances, and that's what superstition is about, is managing anxiety in many cases. That's what it's about.
Can we talk about that a little bit? Managing anxiety, like how that works at a brain level, not like I sit here and I breathe 3 times. I do square breathing personally. I do therapy, and when I was doing my therapy, it was square breathing. It was 4-second hold, 4-second inhale, 4-second hold, 4-second exhale.
Oh, wow.
It's a square, and it helps calm you down. My buddy was talking about he does math equations, and it helps him calm down. It takes him out of the moment. So, but how does that work on like a physiological level or in your brain? I don't know the right word.
Well,
like I said, I'm not a learned man, but how does those chemicals fire in the brain?
Well, I'm not sure we know entirely, but what we do know is that what we don't like, we have problems with is uncertainty, is a lack of control, especially when things are really important, right? And so that lack of control, that feeling of lack of control, can create anxiety, can be the trigger of anxiety, and so. I was thinking about people who are fishermen. There are two kinds of things that it seems to me that you might be concerned about when it comes to superstition. One is simply having good luck, right? And having a good outcome. But in some situations, it may not be the case for you and your folks. But other fishing people, there's quite a bit of danger involved. There is a great amount of danger involved. And, I'm actually talking to you from Stonington, Connecticut, and about a block and a half to my left is one of the last fishing fleets in the state of Connecticut, commercial fishing. It means, trawlers, and draggers, as they call them, and also lobstermen. And there is a plaque down there with a growing number of names on it, unfortunately, of people who've lost their lives at sea. And so there's a lot of superstition involved in commercial fishing that I think is aimed at that, is that there is anxiety, people worry, people hope that whatever the superstition is will have some effect on their safety and their luck. It's more likely that it has an effect on their psychology, on their management of anxiety, than it does on the actual outcome. And then the other thing, so those are the two things, is like the danger of fishing, which probably is less for your folks. I imagine accidents happen.
A
right?
lot. Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of kayak fishing. So all the boats screaming by, whether it's another fishing boat or a wakeboarder or jet ski, they all will flip you. It'll flip you in no time flat. So
So there is some danger involved. And so those are that's a classic. Some of the very earliest studies ever done of superstition in any psychological analysis many years ago were about fishing. There's a famous one. I don't think I wrote about it in the book that you read, but it's in the other book. There's a guy named Malinowski, Bratislava Malinowski, Branislaw, and he was in the 20s. He was in, and you can stop me if I'm going on too long.
No, please go. I love this. Okay. Please go.
In the 20s, or actually it was during World War I, he was in the Melanesian Islands, off of New Guinea, and he studied these fishermen in the Trobriand Islands, little islands, and he noticed that they fished in two locations. They had a lagoon that they fished in, which was relatively safe, and then on other occasions they fished out in the open waters. And this is like dugout canoe kinds of things, very, they didn't have a lot of safety equipment. And they did rituals and they had sort of magical things that they would do before fishing. But he noticed, and it makes sense, that they did far more when they were fishing out in the open waters, right? And they just did a few in the lagoon. And he assumed that the difference was the relative safety of the two. In fact, the fishing might not be, who knows which would be better in terms of the actual catch. But safety was clearly more of an issue in the open water. So this is like very early. A sociologist from Poland, uh, uh, identifying a psychological factor that affected superstition in fishermen.
Yeah. Okay. So a little bit on fishing. We're gonna play back and forth here a little. I
Sure.
know that because we're chasing, like, I like bass fishing, so I chase a specific breed of fish. It's a largemouth or a smallmouth bass. So what we have in fishing is called patterning. So this animal, depending on the season, whether it's mating season, feeding up before winter, or after mating season and eating freely in the summer, because in the winter they will kind of hunker down. They don't eat as much because they
Mhm.
have to conserve, their metabolism slows down. They have to conserve energy, all that stuff. But we're patterning these fish, and they follow, whether it be like contour lines, like cracks in the bottom, or like structure, which is like rocks or boulders or stuff on the bottom, a flat bottom or a rough bottom, depending on the fish. They hide in weeds and what they call cover, which is like fallen trees, weed lines, all that kind of stuff. So they'll hide because they're either an ambush predator or they're like pelagic, they're chasing, but they're chasing bait that holds tight to rocks or that holds tight to another piece of cover. So finding these patterns is part of when you're going into fishing. Like, sometimes they're inshore, sometimes they're offshore, but I could definitely see where the superstition going offshore, because like you said, it's personal safety at that point. And for
Mm.
me and a lot of the guys that I talk to when it comes to fishing in general, when they're talking about their superstitions, they're talking about catching the fish. And really, it's a numbers game. If you pattern the fish correctly, it is an animal. It doesn't have people. My buddy Alex likes to say that people anthropomorphize the animal too much, like it's thinking, like it knows. They don't read the same book we do. I've heard that many times, like. But really, when it comes down to it, it's just patterning an animal and whether they're on a good bite window or a bad bite window. And that's according to like a lunar phase, which is really weird. But there's a lot of science backing both of those on both migration, eating cycles, everything. So, when it comes to the superstition is when people are like you're talking about, like rub your belly and tap your head 3 times and cast, or I wear my
Yeah.
lucky hat, or uh, one of the oldest ones I heard was no bananas in the boat. Now, I've seen that disproven. I looked into it and I talked to a couple people, and they said the origination of that was back when they would be transporting bananas. The spiders on the bananas were so venomous that they would, if you got bit on the ship, you would die. I mean, this is
Ooh.
old
Ooh.
sailing days, like,
Yeah.
the banana
Uh-huh.
spiders, the in Brazil, they call it the Brazilian wandering spider. It's the same spider. So if you
Wow.
ever, it's a pretty interesting spider. If you ever want to look it up, it's very, very
I may
toxic.
never eat a banana again.
Yeah. Just make sure it's not pre-packaged. You know what I'm saying? Just get them fresh. Let the produce guide pick them out, But yeah, no. So, but that's where that whole superstition came from. No bananas on the boat. Nobody wants to die. And
Yeah.
that has trickled down into sport fishing, well, commercial fishing, and then sport fishing, and then, fun fishing. It's just like a
Right.
thing where your grandpa's like, don't bring no bananas on my boat. But
Right.
there's no banana spiders. You're fine, old man.
So
But like, people feel that way and they will lose confidence. And fishing, I've asked every angler I've ever talked to, confidence is 90% of the game.
hmm.
If you are confident in your pattern, if you are confident in your task, the lure you're throwing, the presentation that you give it, you will catch a fish. So in there, where is I know there's superstition. I know there's like some sort of mental game in there where a person can have confidence without having to create of basically what you kind of talked about, the illusion of control. Like, I've looked
Right.
at some of your writing for sure. Like, trust me, I'm not
Yeah.
that
No,
dumb.
no.
Like, you have stuff like illusion of control and confirmation bias. Like, you've discussed
Right.
all these things, which I really love. But would you like to bring to light anywhere in there where confidence is key without having to touch your belly and rub your head 3 times?
So the what I would say about confidence, and this applies to related concept of self-esteem in different environments, but it comes from success. I mean, for the most part, it's not that confidence, in my view, it's less likely that confidence in and of itself, like if you put on a confident face, and you don't, whether you're confident or not, um, that I think is less likely to be helpful. But if you have success and you develop a routine or a pattern that has been successful in the past for you, it doesn't have to be superstitious. It just has to be well thought out. That will undoubtedly produce confidence. And the question is, is it the chicken or the egg that comes first? Are we feeling confident because we're doing something that's worked in the past and we feel certain that it might again, as opposed to driving the situation through your confidence. So like you've talked about how you have routines that you do and so forth. And I think there's a lot of value in that. I think that some of the same benefits of a superstition, a flat out superstition, can come from just establishing routines that are comfortable to you, that don't require extra thinking, that in fact occupy your mind while you're preparing to perform or whatever. It's the same. Coaches actually encourage, players to establish a pregame routine often, and to fall into a habit. And if that's all it is a routine, that you do in order to prepare yourself for performance, then that's not a superstition. That's a way of preparing yourself. If on the other hand you give it some kind of magical, aspect, you say, I have to press the button, I have to dribble the ball 5 times before I shoot, now you're crossing over into something else. But that's what I think I would say about confidence, is it comes from success, from an experience of success, and from probably, repeating the kinds of actions that seem to have worked for you in the past.
So creating a structured routine, not necessarily going, these are my magic undies, I'll never wash them, but like, okay, in the morning I put on my underwear first, okay, then I put on my pants. Like creating a structured routine for yourself. And you brought a good point, like sports. Like, did you do any studies with like group sports or group activities like that for superstition?
I didn't myself personally, but there are quite a few of them out there. And of course, sports, it varies depending upon the sport and the player, the position of the player. Like hockey, goalies are really superstitious for obvious reasons. Or I'm not all of them, but I mean, on average, they're more superstitious. And so there has been quite a bit of work on it. One of the interesting studies is going back quite a while, that they study of high school kids playing basketball, and they asked them about their own individual superstitions. And what they discovered was that the better players had more than the ones who were not good. And of course, part of the reason for that is that, they seem to be working. If you're a better player, right? It seems to be successful. So
yeah. And I believe that falls under, I'm sorry to keep going back to I took a bunch of Cliff Notes. I'm a dummy, so I had to do a bunch of Cliff Notes. But you have stuff like placebo effects, where people experience improvements and outcomes due to their beliefs or expectations, even though there's no actual effect.
That's right.
So so that would be like, well, you said they were better players, but do you feel that the superstition was more of a routine, but they felt it was superstition, or how does that work for the better players, like in your opinion? Because I know you didn't do the study, but
no, I didn't do the study, but I think the authors of the study say the same thing, which is that there are two things. One is, if you're a better player, let's say you're a starter, right? Then in a sense you have more to lose, right? There's more on the line for you than there is if you're a bench warmer, second string or whatever. And that's true for professional athletes as well. That, I mean, when you think about it, the difference between a good hitter and a bad hitter is like, 3 out of 10 versus 2 out of 10 in terms of hits, right? 300 average, 200 average, a huge difference. In how you're going to perform. And so in those cases where one, it seems to work, or you think it does, and 2, there's a lot on the line, then those are the kinds of things that will bring it out.
So do you feel then, I'm trying to I'm taking in what you're saying. I'm sorry, I'm so slow. I'm taking in what you're saying, and I'm trying to form a question, but it almost feels like a lot of superstition is based out of like how it says in the beginning. Well, not, it doesn't say it in the beginning, but what I would consider, because in people in the human, well, actually just being a mammal, you have like a couple different fears, and one of them, there's base root fears, is what I understand them to be called. There's a thumbs up from Apple. There is the fear of dying, the fear of being alone, and the fear of you could pick a choice, but those two are like the two root fears that I'm aware of that people have to deal with, and they spider out into all these things. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's like you got to be around people all the time, or what, you know, they spider into these different things. Do you feel that a lot of superstition is based around a specific base fear, or is it all just anxiety?
I mean,
or what's the mental breakdown on that?
So the interesting thing is that there is a division. There are superstitions that are purely positive. They're luck based. They're not about fear. Whoops.
Yeah, sorry, my bad. I meant to hit mute. Sorry.
They're not about fear. They're about getting the good thing. You know, making the good thing happen. And then there are many fear-based ones. You know, that think about all the unlucky. You know, black cats, 13, all of that. Those are we avoid those, or some people do, because of the you know, you want to avoid some horrible thing happening. Horrible things do happen to people regardless, and so these beliefs are a illusion, right, of a control over those bad things, that you could avoid having them. So many of them are fear-based in one way or another, or at least an attempt to manage anxiety, right, which is related. But others are purely just, you know, crossing your fingers and I hope it happens, you know, and all that sort of thing. And psychologists suggest that those are two different things, that they don't, that they operate differently psychologically for us.
So how do they operate let's define that. How do they operate psychologically? Like where does that break down in the head? I'm sure it's according to the person, but if you could give me like a rough idea.
Yeah, I mean, some people, for example, some people are more motivated by one than the other, you know, and that can vary depending upon. But there's also just the idea that they are doing different things psychologically. You know, one is aimed specifically at a hoped for outcome, right? I want this to happen. I want to get a good grade on the test. There could be some anxiety associated with some of those, but for the most part, they're just like, I hope this helps, right?
Like a big hit of dopamine or something. Yeah.
Right. And also it just, you know, I've studied, you know, it's like one of those things, like I've done all the studying I can possibly do for this test, but you know, you never know what that professor's going to ask. There might be some weird thing, you know, so this lucky thing is to protect me against that. And
rabbit's foot. Yeah.
Whatever. And anyway, and so that's I think I guess what I would say, one thing that's different about them is that I see the negative ones as being, you know, not a great thing for us, right? You know, think about if no one had ever taught us that the number 13 was bad luck, or that black cats were bad luck, or that, you know, pick your poison, you know, we'd be all better off. We'd be much better off. I mean, I can understand why they happen, you know, especially in an earlier time when there was less understanding of the weather, disease, things that happen to people. That, you know, obviously that was some explanation. Some explanation, even if it was false, was better than none at all. And but you know, we're modern people now. We don't need to worry about the number 13, or, you know, walking under a ladder or whatever. Although, you know, walking under the ladder may have some rational aspect.
In the construction field, it has every rational aspect, only because I'm around guys who drop their screwdrivers and stuff all the time. You know, like
if anybody's up there, I'm not going under.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but I will say, like, you brought this up in your book, and it was awesome how you based let's talk about the origination of superstition. And it goes
Mm.
way back. I mean, you're talking about the Greek cultures where they were writing curses against each other for a loved one or another, you know what I'm saying? Or not for a loved one, but to take some dude's lady. Like, I'm going to curse this guy and I want the love spell to have this lady come to me. And like, you were writing all this great stuff. And I was like, dude, that is so the all that history behind all this stuff, like going back into the basis of basically like general religion as we know it, like it caused such a question in my mind where I was like, dude, I just want to know more about this, because I mean, for people to be writing these things back in the day, where did all this come from? Like, was it just like, oh, the moon came out and so everyone felt really lucky, or was there,
Right.
I don't know, man. I really think it's really interesting. So can we get into that a little bit, like the history of
Sure.
it?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about, one of the things that's fun when you write a book is that you make a lot of choices about what to include and what not to include. And this business about curses fascinated me, and I could see you liked it too. But
Yeah.
So you have to remember that this started in the Greek and Roman era before Christ and all of that, and they had this whole panoply of gods, all these different gods, many of which were very mischievous, and they felt these gods were acting directly in their lives every day. And so you can see how from that would come the possibility of some kind of horizontal action of a curse. And so this was a big deal. There were these metal curse tablets. They would write out curses on these tablets. There's a picture of one in the book, and usually the person might be illiterate who's doing it, so they would have to get a vendor who would sit there with them and write it out and so on. And they were all different kinds, as you say. There was a love curse where you would like wish that the person would no longer love their husband and instead love you. There were sports curses where people cared even more than we do today. They cared a lot about athletes and whose team would win and so forth. So they would curse the other team's athlete. They would attempt to. And they would pay money to write out this curse thing. They would put it. Usually they would put it in a cemetery or in a well, because there was a belief that the message of the curse had to go into the underworld. And that the creatures of the underworld would carry out the curse, and so I mean we don't do this anymore. That's one of the things, we tend not to do this anymore. It's a completely lost art, but at the same time, I can see why psychologically it might make you feel a little better. In other words, like you're not actually hurting the person. You may believe you're hurting the person. But you would walk away after this experience and say, well, I got that guy, and I'm sure it would be appealing in many circumstances. But it's interesting because it was very elaborate process, and we just don't do it at all. And the only reason we really know about it is because they found these tablets. They've dug them up and they found them and they translated them, and they realized that there were all these curses.
This is a weird wishing well. It's a little negative here.
It's funny, they keep finding them. Just a couple of years ago they found a few more in a well. They dug up a well in Greece or something, and they found more of them. So before I started studying this is one of those examples of something I never knew about until I started to get into this.
Yeah, and I mean, I use the term, but it's a wishing well. Like that's literally like how it goes down. And then I feel like I didn't read this part in there, but for me as just the way I conceptualize stuff, I would feel like if my curse or my wish did not come true, that's not on me at all. That's on the gods,
the
that
spirits
like,
or whatever. The demons
they felt
their
like
job. Right. Exactly. That's right. There's a lot of, or the guy who wrote it out may have done it wrong.
He wrote it wrong, or somebody paid more, or whatever it is. Like, all right, man, whatever. I tried. But
it was really interesting. One of the things that just one more thing on that was that in Greek and Roman society, when they did have courts. and
Yeah.
you had to go into court and defend yourself verbally in court. And some people were really good at it, and other people were not, right? And their reputations were known. And so if someone who was usually a good orator in court somehow didn't do too well, it was assumed that someone had cursed him, and that's why.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I was gonna say you put that in your book, like they would please make him mute, or please make him like
Exactly.
mumble. Like, yeah, I'm like, dude, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
It's
Dude, and
wild.
you know what's funny
It's
is like
kind of,
people still wish that kind of stuff today, but we're such like a way far advanced in culture,
yeah,
hopefully at this point.
yeah.
But
Although I
I'm
will tell you that if you go on Amazon, there are particularly love potions. There are quite a few of those. It's sort of
oh my
equivalent
God,
kind of thing. Yeah.
really
I don't know how they work, and of course they're, it's a waste of money, but
snake oil. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a bunch of snake oil. That's
Yeah.
awesome, man. So I really want to know, like, when it comes to these superstitions, like you said, the best thing you can do is a routine. Is there any way that we can, like, if you could summarize like how you would debunk most superstition? Is it break it apart analytically, or let's really think about this? Because the idea and why I wanted to talk to you, because we've talked about it a little bit, is the reality of superstition, like the conscious mind of superstition, right? So where in our conscious minds do we let the superstition go, or take away the power of the superstition to take this power back? Is it really just because we all have a little bit of anxiety and that's the way we cope with it? Or is there a way around that? Is there another coping mechanism we could use?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's I can give you a couple of answers on that. One is that you're going to be, I grew up in a family that was not superstitious at all, right? And I learned no superstitions from my parents, and that's not true for many other people, especially if they come from certain cultures. Italian families often have superstitions. And Irish, but anyway, so that if you're lucky enough not to grow up in that environment, that would help. The other thing is that, if you believe in your superstition, then if you think about it for a second, what it means that you're actually ascribing some kind of a magical belief. You're believing in magic. In other words, because there can't be, for the most part, there can't be a physical connection between what you're doing and what, and so therefore you have to think about that. Do I really want that to be in my belief, that I believe in some supernatural force that just happens to help me in this circumstance? So that's one thing to think about. And and then the other thing, of course, is that we can create superstitions in people in the laboratory, under circumstances where we know there's no magic involved. We are creating the circumstances. So when it comes to it, there's an easy alternatives explanation that it's, some kind of superstitious learning, a cause and effect, confirmation bias, or a cause and effect, a false cause and effect relationship. There are lots of sort of mundane alternative explanations for why you are behaving as you are and believing as you are. And so given those two alternatives, magic or something more psychological, for me, the simpler explanation makes more sense. Suggesting that the world is full of spooky magical stuff, that's, you're going to have to explain that to me.
Yeah.
That's just me. I am a rational person, but I think that's the choice we make.
Yeah. Okay. So a perfect example, because I made this choice young, and then I've recently remade the choice. I've lived I pulled a very rough lifestyle. I did not even graduate high school. I chose to do a lot of illicit activities and go down a very dark path. Yes, I am predispositioned and chemically imbalanced to put other substances in my body to change the way I feel, to make me feel normal. That's just the way my chemical makeup is. That's the science of it. But I have a God that I believe in, and the only reason I believe in that God is just because, like you said, like it's situational. Like, and the situations and the circumstances over and over and over again help strengthen that belief for me, and it gives me like confidence, and that's just me as a person. Okay, so I'm not saying that everybody else has to believe that. That is not for me to say. That is just where I find my belief system in my life has led me to that direction. And like, I'm sorry if this basically voids me from any future conversation, but like, that's just where my belief system goes. So when it comes to things like, say, fishing, it's just fishing. You know, it's just fishing to me. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to work, it's just work, man. Like, if I dropped the board on my toe, it wasn't because I didn't do 5 Hail Marys and dance in a circle in the morning. It just happens. Stuff happens all the time. Bad stuff happens and good stuff happens. Like, and it's not, you know, it's all about, like you said, like, I have a routine. I have a structured routine for myself every morning, or as much as I can with a toddler, you know, because you got to chase them around a lot. That'll throw off a routine real quick. Yeah. So you understand, it's just mayhem. You're like, oh, you're awake. Oh, okay. But at the end of the day, man, like, I rest my head on that. And the only reason I rest my head on that is the feeling that I get from it. And like you said, if you believe in this stuff, like, and I truly do, and it gives me just it's not even a false sense of confidence or anything. It just gives me a sense of comfort that I don't get anywhere else. Now, that could be me hiding from some sort of anxiety or something like that. Scientifically, that could be, but for me, it works very well. Now, I'll eat a banana in my kayak. I'll take a banana on the boat. None of that bothers me. If I catch a fish on the first cast, which is another weird one, like, if you catch a fish on the first cast, you're gonna have a bad fishing day. No, I don't care. I'm like, cool, first cast, that's rad. You know, that's one. You know, let's keep going. You know, that means I'm not getting none all day. You know, but when it comes to like my safety and the safety of others, the only thing I know how to do is pray, because that's my confidence factor. You know what I'm saying? That's like what you would define as my reading your book. That would be you defining me like as a superstitious person in general, which I don't mind. But do you feel that there is like a relationship between that at all, or religion and spirituality and superstition? Because I mean, it was all based around superstition to begin with, right? So so do you feel that there's a strong connection there? Or
first of all, I thank you for asking the question. I'm you know, sure you've been quite open with your personal beliefs. You know, I have a funny view of this. I'm not a religious person myself, and you probably get that from other things I've said so far. But I also wrote a different book, by the way, and don't be offended by this.
I'm not.
I'm gonna pull it off the shelf.
Go for it. No, I am such a connoisseur.
This is live TV here. But now, is that backwards, or can you read it?
No, we got it. Stuart Vyse, The Uses of Delusion.
So
it's not always rational to be rational.
Ooh, why it's not always rational to be rational. So I told you, I'm normally a very rational person, and I spend much of my career trying to get other people to be more rational. But I also realized that there were certain things that aren't entirely rational, but might have benefits for people. And you know, who am I to say, therefore, that you shouldn't do them? Not all of them are going to appeal to me, but they obviously have helped other people. And you know, religious belief is one of them, that has been shown in certain circumstances. Many of the benefits of religious belief apparently come from the social practice of it, more than just private belief. But obviously it is a comfort to you and to many others. And like, you know, maybe it doesn't make sense, but maybe everything doesn't have to make sense. You know, I give just a detour from my own life. Right. I was in a relationship with a woman once, and I happened in the middle of a conversation. I tell this story in the book. In the middle of a conversation, I happened to say in a very rational way, well, you know, given all the millions of people in the world, each of us could have found any number of other people to fall in love with, and we would have been just as happy as you and I are now. Right? That did not go over well. right? As you can imagine,
Yeah.
the conversation ended for a while there,
Okay.
because people don't want that to, it's a perfectly rational statement, right? It's a
100%.
perfectly rational statement. No one wants to hear that, right?
Yeah.
No, everyone wants to believe that their love is special and unique and so forth. And it appears that there's some benefit in having that kind of a belief about your relationship. So maybe it's a delusion. It's definitely a useful one if you have it. And
Yeah.
so I'm not I understand completely. And the most important thing to me is that you are rational in your everyday life and the decisions you make and so forth. I think that's what we all strive for, and that's what I've worked for more than anything else. So
I know. I love that. That's awesome. I thank you for that point of view, because sometimes it's a point of contention for people, but thank you for
right,
intelligently
sure,
like having a wonderful point of view on that. Like, I
right,
appreciate it. I do have a question then.
sure,
And it just left my brain. I sorry, I got the ADDs.
yeah,
You know how you're talking about hyperactivity in kids. Like, I don't know what
mhm.
years that was, but I was born in the '80s, and so like I got to be one of the test kids for the test
You
program for
could have
time
been, yeah,
release Ritalin, and like it was really
yeah,
fun. But my
yeah,
brain is still just all over the
yeah,
place. What was my question? Oh, okay. So check this. If cognitive dissonance, like, we didn't cover it too much, and I really wanted to talk about that a little bit, because I find this to be the most interesting. It's when people hold, I'm going to you've defined this stuff, like this stuff. I'm
yeah,
just repeating this for the people who haven't ever heard this before. It's like when people hold contradictory beliefs or behaviors, and they experience discomfort. So superstition can sometimes help reduce this discomfort by providing a way to rationalize events or outcomes. And that's what was kind of like the basis when I was talking about religion. So like, can we talk about cognitive dissonance for a little bit?
sure, sure. Cognitive dissonance, basically what the classic example of it is a situation where you find yourself under whatever circumstance doing something that goes against what is your beliefs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and you can't change what you did. You've done it.
Mm-hmm.
And so and of course, you, by recognizing the gap between your beliefs and what you did, you're in a state of discomfort, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the only alternative then is to change your beliefs to map onto what you've done. And so I mean, it's a common thing in everyday life. I believe it's quite common in everyday life. Not all of it has to do with superstition, and it's probably not the biggest factor
No,
in
no, yeah.
creating a superstition, but it's quite common. You can think of it as a form of rationalization, and the idea is to have internal consistency, to believe that you are acting internally consistent.
Got it. So, okay, yeah, because I mean, it was in the readings, and I like kind of went with the definition and kind of like wrote in some stuff to like create like they're in a question. Like, it's basically justification and
Yes,
rationalization of whatever negative behavior you're portraying. People
that's
are
right.
using
That's right.
people are using it to justify, like, okay, well, because we had a banana in the boat, we didn't catch no fish, man. Like, that's what happened. Had nothing to
Right.
do with you were in the wrong part of the water all day.
Right.
90
Right.
10% of the water holds 90% of the fish in every lake. You know what I'm saying? So if you ain't around them, you just ain't around them. That's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but you did say one other thing, and we've been talking about this. We've been dancing around a little bit, and I really love it. It's the learned behavior. It's like you're saying, growing up in, say,
Mm.
Irish or Italian family, like, you learn these superstitions, and they just become your reality. So, can you explain a little bit further into that, like how that goes down and how we can maybe curve that, or
Well, I mean,
besides just
I
not
think
talking
it's,
about it?
yeah. I mean, I mean, um, it's difficult because when you think about it, some of these are very culturally based, and people love their culture and where they come from. I mean, I'm thinking about, it's not just in Italian families, but
We were
but
just using
what
examples. Yeah.
right, but for example, the belief in the evil eye,
Ah,
that is it's actually a remarkably, I grew up in the Midwest. We never heard of this thing, but
right.
or I was taught it by one of my students, when I was 50 years old, and then I discovered that it's almost worldwide. It's throughout South Asia, the Middle East, parts of South America, not so much in Europe, but not so much the United States. And so if each country has its own expression of that. Italians have, if a person is sick, Italians have this little test that they do where they get a bowl of water and they put some olive oil on it, and if it's runny rather than creating bubbles, then you're the victim of the evil eye. And if so it's a test, and then there are things you can do to get it over, to count as a counteraction, completely unique to Italian culture, right? So it's hard because this is what grandma said, and this is what, and so changing those aspects of culture are probably kind of be difficult. One hopes that as people become more sophisticated and science minded, and or study science and so forth in school, then they realize that this doesn't make sense. But I think you kind of, this is the difference for me personally versus other people I know who are superstitious. I know for a fact that it just wasn't part of my upbringing at all. And so I don't have any superstitions, except for that one experience on the airplane.
Yeah.
But whereas I think that if you're going to develop these superstitions, even in sport, right, it helps if you come from a family where that's at least an open question, a possibility that there is magic, and that there is room for superstition. So.
I mean, and you've encapsulated it so well in your writing and like what we've been talking about, and you keep saying it over and over again. Can you hold your book up one more time, Believing in Magic, real quick? Because we're gonna say this. Some people prefer to have magic in the world because the reality of it is too difficult to understand. And really,
Right.
if you just do your research, you create a routine, a strong routine based around fact-finding information that will help you to slowly break down your own personal superstitions, whether you were born into them or
Right.
you've created them over a lifetime of experience.
Right.
Is that a good way to sum that up?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I have a list of questions for you before I let you go. Like I kind of do like this little question and answer. A lot of them have to do with fishing, so you don't have to worry about those. Unless do you actually? I'm sorry, I never even asked you. Have you ever gone fishing? Have you ever been out on the
Only as
water?
a kid, like off the dock with my dad a million years ago. I mean, it looks to be lots of people do fish. We have a lot of, obviously sport fishermen and women in boats. A lot of boating around here. I also see people doing it off of, bridges and docks. So there's a lot of it in the area, and I'm sure it's a fun activity, but I never have gotten into it.
Yeah. Okay. Are you an outdoors person at all? Do you ever just go out and just like take in, like, I listen to, I don't know if you ever heard of Huberman Lab, this Dr. Andrew Huberman. He lives out here. He does medical research at Stanford out here. And he is basically his line of research is these receptors in your eyes and like how your eyes intake information and like input, whether it be energy or whatever, and how it like he talks about going out in the morning in the sunrise and taking in blue light, raw blue light into your eyes of the sunlight. It helps reset your circadian rhythm. It helps balance out your daily energy, like things like that. So are you ever one to go outside and just enjoy the outdoors or anything like that? Do you just take in the greenery and stuff? Or
so yes and no. I'm a very indoor person. In fact, I have this expression that I say, which is, I love nature, but I prefer looking at it through glass. But in fact, of course, because I work at a computer most of the time, I do deliberately have to make myself go out, and you always feel better. You always are, rejuvenated. In the summer, I swim. I go out and do with some other people and swim in the ocean, and it's just that doesn't take long. It's a short thing, but it just really resets your day, and it's wonderful.
Absolutely. And we are, as a mammal, predispositioned chemically to be at more peace around water. We just are. Like,
Well,
I don't know. I can't give you the science. I've read this and I've heard this, and I am, like I said, I'm not a learned man, so I won't repeat it and like sound stupid, but I will say that there is a whole research study on that and like the benefits of just being near water, both physiologically and mentally. Like, it's a calming effect. So, but also, I mean, you're out there, you're also working and creating dopamine and getting all this, you know, like, so that's a whole other thing for sure.
I'll tell you though, growing up in the landlocked Midwest, you know, it's a joy to be at the, you know, I have the beach right out the window, you know, it's great. So
that's wonderful. So, you know what I didn't ask you? I'm so sorry. I'm so rude. Do you have like your family, like you said, you've been around children and stuff. Do you have family and all that stuff?
Yeah, I have 2 kids that are grown now. They're one is my son is they're both in their early 30s. My son is a journalist in Washington, D.C., and my daughter is a high school English teacher. And so I too am, like my parents, am divorced, so I'm single, but you know, I'm happily so at the moment. And no, and I also have, as of 2 years ago, I have a first grandchild. So my daughter,
congratulations!
had
That's awesome.
A boy. So
yeah, dude.
Yeah.
It's like Tonka trucks for like 10 years. Yo. Here you go, dude. And they play with the box more than they play with the toy anyways. You know, it's super rad. Yeah. And then that's the cool part. You get to do all the fun stuff. My parents, the way I grew up, very structured. Now that I have children and I bring them to my grandparents or their grandparents, my parents' house, they just let them run free. I'm like, what? Like, where? Here's have candy, have snacks. I'm like, well, where's my candy? Like, dude.
The grandparent role is quite different. You know, we're the fun ones. You know?
Yes, and then you get to hand them back, and then I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this sugared up demon? No, I love my children; they're great. So, all right, well, I'm gonna let's jump into these questions real quick. So, I'm gonna skip a lot of the fishing ones, you know, for you know. Because we don't really need to talk about fishing too much. But if you could spend a day with anyone, it doesn't matter. Time doesn't matter. You can go back in time, whatever. With anyone, who would it be and why?
Oh, boy. That's a tough one. I actually, the person that comes to mind right off the bat is Carl Sagan. I don't know if you know that name, the astronomer. He was also a rationalist and a brilliant man. There's a show many years ago called Cosmos, in which he talked about the stars and the universe and so forth. And he's a wonderful communicator of science, and you know, he's one of my idols. So he would be someone that I would definitely want to talk to, spend some time with. He also seemed to be a really nice guy.
Yeah. Dude, hey, awesome. I love it. Like, one of my buddies, I keep quoting this guy because I think it was the best one, but he said, I would like to sit down and smoke cigars with Nelson Mandela on the beach in Hawaii. I was like,
oh, that would be
that's
great.
Rad. Yeah. So that's cool, you know. So all right. What's your biggest fear in life?
My biggest, I don't have many. I'm thankfully, I mean, I've had fears earlier in my life. You know, I've reached, you know, retirement, and at a point where I have lower responsibilities now. You know, I worry about, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I worry about the world that we are leaving for our children and our grandchildren. And, you know, there's a lot going on with the environment and other things that I worry more for them than I do for myself about those things. So
that's solid. I live in California. I can,
right.
Yep.
I'm
right there with you.
Right.
All right. What's your biggest struggle in life right now? Like you said, you're in retirement stuff, but what's your daily struggle right now? What's the big one?
Well, again, I don't feel I have that many. I feel very lucky. I feel very lucky. You know, my biggest struggle is, you know, how can I fix this sentence that doesn't work right? You know, as I'm writing, whatever it is I'm writing, because I do pretty much write full time now, and I'm fortunate to have an audience. But
do we have another book on the run? Are we getting another book?
Yeah, I'm hopefully working on a book on spiritualism, 19th century spiritualism, seances and all that sort of thing.
Yes, I'm interested.
I can't say anything more, but that's
I'll take it. Thank you.
But so I have, other than the usual struggles of trying to make sure I eat the right things and that sort of thing, that's all I really can't come up with too much to complain about or to worry about.
Hey man, that's awesome. Like my personal one's balance. Like I don't know how to balance everything.
Oh yeah.
Just running around all the time. So I get it. Like time. There's not enough time in the day,
Right. Well, that's true.
Okay. Let's start. This is a point where you get to be like very proud of yourself, and not in like a prideful sense, but like you could, they call them like I call them a life hammer. Like you can beat your chest and be like, I did this, dude. I accomplished this. Like what would be your major life accomplishment? What would be your life hammer?
I think here's the, and this is, it shouldn't be as hard as it is, but I was lucky. My kids did want to go to college, both my kids, probably because they grew up in my household, they did want to go to college. And thanks to my employer and the job I had, and as well as my wife's job, we were able to get them through college without any debt. That's a really hard thing in America these days. And to have been lucky enough to give them that, that they emerged from 4 years of college with degrees at the schools that they wanted to go to, right? The decision was not made on financial basis. And we made sacrifices for that to happen as their parents. But for many people, it's not possible, anymore. And so so on a personal level, that's probably one, right up there as one of my the things I'm most proud of. Awesome. I mean, I have professional things too. I've written these books and I'm a columnist for a magazine. I'm very proud of those things too. But I think the family goals and so on are the ones that count a lot, and so
they matter most, dude. That's I don't swing a hammer because I like to. I swing a hammer because I like having food for my children.
Exactly.
So, okay, two things, side notes, real quick. First off, where are you a columnist? I'm sorry, columnist at?
So I write there's a magazine called Skeptical Inquirer, which is a magazine that is based on sort of debunking a lot of beliefs like ghosts and paranormal and this sort of thing. Yes. So it's a debunking kind of magazine. It has a long history. It's almost 50 years old. And I write a column called Behavior and Belief about all sorts of irrational and superstitious beliefs. I write about, I write about spiritualism and, all sorts of things. The field of autism is full of very bizarre and unscientific treatments because it's such a difficult problem. And so I've written about that too, drawing on my older background. And so that has been a great joy to me. I write once a month, which is a good rhythm for me. And I can write on all sorts of different topics as long as they're relevant to the magazine and to my field of psychology. And so Skeptical Inquirer magazine, everyone should subscribe to it.
I will. Absolutely. Also, another super interesting facet of mine is like I'm really into like, not necessarily I'm really into ghosts or anything like that, but it is a driving force in my brain. Like when it comes, not necessarily cryptids in general, but like the ghosts in the spiritual realm and what's actually the reality of it. Is there like a synapses in my brain that creates a figure because I close my eyes looking at a magazine with the light on and I open my eyes and that figure is there in the room? Or like I'm curious.
We cover all that stuff. UFOs too, all sorts of different things. So check it out.
Oh,
Check
I'm
it out.
subscribing, dude. Thank you, thank you. I'm subscribing, and everybody else, subscribe. Trust me, your life will be better for it. It'll be fun. Okay. Have you ever? Well, we're gonna do this in a different fashion because it's. Have you ever learned a lesson on the water that you've implemented in your life? But have you ever learned a lesson in your research of
Oh,
superstition that you've implemented into your life? Like, you know,
well, I mean, one of the things that and it comes somewhat out of my research and that of other people in my field, my little field, is and this may not be surprising to you, but is the concept of humility. That it's easy for someone like me. I've got a science background. I got a PhD. I read a magazine. It would be easy for me to be look down and make fun of people who have various kinds of beliefs. And I think people in the past did do that. They used sarcasm and so on to try to get their point across. And of course, it tends not to work. People just become defensive. And so the thing that makes more sense to me and seems to work better is having a conversation where everyone's equal, not unlike what we've had tonight.
mm-hmm.
And so that is something that I've tried very hard to incorporate in everything I do, and I think it's been great. It's been good for me, and I think it's also been good for the conversation.
Absolutely, dude. And I really appreciate you coming on here. And like, when you say that, in my brain, there's two sides to that coin, because also people with beliefs, whether it be religious, spiritual, or superstition, will also be judgy and feel better than someone who's a man of science. And like, there's the judgments pointed in both directions. And for you to have that idea of humility, which is at least defined to me, was the right size view of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely appreciate that. So
That's great.
dude,
That's great.
thank you.
See, it is working.
It totally worked, dude. You killed it. Thank you. And you've been putting up with my dummy for
No.
for a long
You're
time.
doing
So
great. You're doing
I
fine.
appreciate you, man. All right. What's the biggest mental or emotional block for you? Like, what really stops you in your tracks?
I mean, like everybody, there are times when I make a mistake or do something wrong, and it sticks with me. It's hard to put it aside, and I want to correct it, and I might not be able to right away, and so on. So, learning to live a little bit more in the moment and put things aside, and it turns out that often the problem is easier to solve after a little bit of time anyway. So that those kinds of things occur to me in my everyday life. I do make mistakes once in a while. It comes with the territory.
Yeah. I mean, hey, you're a parent. There was no manual. You're just going shooting from the hip and calling it word.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. I appreciate that, because I have a hard time letting things go sometimes as well, especially
Right.
when I do something wrong. When somebody else does something wrong, I kind of bust their balls a little bit and I let it go. But if it's me, I'm like my own worst critic. I'm so self-analytical. Like, I can't believe I said that in the third grade. Like, I'm that guy, So
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Okay. Tell us one thing that no one knows about you, but like a window into who you are.
No one knows about me. I mean, there's very little that no one knows about.
Well, I mean,
But something surprising that I could tell
they know
you.
everything. Yeah.
Oh gosh. That's a tough one. Oh well, I have preferences that people would be surprised about. For example, well, I watch horror films. I'm very few of my friends watch horror films. I do. I also I like cheap food, fast food, and I like my most controversial. I believe this is probably my most controversial culinary taste. which is that I like Miracle Whip.
Like
Most people,
in the plastic
yeah, I mean,
can.
I don't drink, I don't eat it, with a
Yeah.
spoon, but
No.
most
Yeah.
people hate it that I've come across. They think it's some kind of a weird concoction, but anyway, so
Most people have never tried the keto diet because whipped cream is really good. I'm not gonna lie, Miracle Whip will save you when
I
you
like
need
whipped cream.
something. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, but the
Anyway,
Miracle Whip,
that's
the
my
cinnamon
best
one,
shot at
yeah,
what. Yeah.
that's awesome. No, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, dude, that stuff's awesome. And as for horror movies, I like horror movies. When we get into the green room, I'd love to talk to you about some horror movies because
Okay.
yes, you.
All right.
I can't show my son all my horror movies yet because he's still
Yeah,
10.
I know.
But yeah,
No one in
we're
my
working our
family
way.
likes them but me. No one. So.
Same. I'm like, I like it. All right. So the last and final question. It's a 3-parter. So it's about your health. What do you do for hydration? What do you do for diet? And what do you do for mental clarity?
Ah, well, hydration, and this is probably not a good thing. I drink a lot of coffee. That doesn't really hydrate you, right?
No. Yeah.
And otherwise, I drink water. I do drink water. I
Oh yeah.
just regular water, and lots of it. Um, and the second part was
Diet.
Yeah. So I um I'm probably not that great on the diet, although I do one thing I do is I try not to eat a whole lot during the day. I actually subsist on black coffee for much of the day, and my one big meal is in the evening. I will have, like, at noon I'll have a bagel or something, or whatever. I don't eat a lot during the day, and I try to make a decent healthy meal in the evening, and that helps my weight. And which, by the way, in as you get older, is harder. My metabolism apparently has slowed down, and so even the small diet that I eat doesn't make me thin like I was, in my 30s. But so anyway, that's the diet thing. And the last one.
The last one is mental clarity.
Well, I would say so. So for many years, I was a runner. I can't really do it anymore. I'm 75. I'm going to be 75 this year. I can't really, between breath and knees, but that was awesome. For me, that just being alone with your footfalls out on the road and nothing else for a long period, and that was quite gratifying, and I like that. And I would say that today that is being satisfied with a daily swim. Getting out of my house and into the water, into beautiful nature, and there's also a little social aspect to it because I swim with other people. So for me, that works at the moment.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I love that. So, I have a question for you, dude, because you would be the right guy to ask. My wife, she's a runner. So she ultra runner. She's wild.
Wow.
Don't make no sense. I run my mouth. She can run whatever she wants.
For her.
I'll run the air conditioner occasionally. That's all the running I ever do. But point being is, you were saying something that really stood out to me when you are running with nothing but the sound of your footfalls. A lot of people run with headphones and music and motivation and stuff. Do you feel that there's a better, like, clarity moment with no music?
I found it that way. I mean, I could have, even when I was running, I could have had an iPod or whatever and listened to stuff. And it's not like I don't. I listen to lots of stuff, when I'm in the house or doing chores or whatever. But for me, putting all that aside and being, again, somewhat in nature, even though you're on the road, and you just, it's just you and the rhythm of your running and your breath. There's something mantra-like about that, and you can let obviously your mind is going to wander and you're going to think about all different things, but in today's world, that's really rare. We don't do that, and so I love that. I miss it very much.
That's amazing. Like, sorry, I just that it just I never occurred to me that would be because I'm not a runner. So like to sit
Yeah, I
there
know.
and just be like just pacing with your breath and your footsteps, and like I could imagine that would almost be like you said, like mantra, like almost like hypnotic. Like it would
Yeah,
put
it
you in
is.
like a place. Okay, so have you ever had the runner's high? That's another question. I talked to a runner the other day. He never had the runner's high, and I was like, is that a real thing, or is that?
Well, I mean, I think that there. I don't know whether I've experienced, what one person thinks of the runner's high is another thing. But when I was running regularly and it was, and I was in good shape, you would, you would get a sense of, ease, of comfort, that you're actually doing something quite strenuous, and you're going to be out there for a while, and yet somehow you are actually enjoying it. There are people who say, well, how could you possibly, it's like, I couldn't do this, right? And yet there's something about the achievement of it. Again, going back to our earlier conversation, people who run long distances are achieving something that 90% of Americans can't do, right? And so there is quite a sense of accomplishment if you're a runner or a regular athlete, that I think does have that sense. When I got later in my career of running, I ran into my 60s. I would start out each day and say, there's no way I can do this. Like, I am going to have to stop. I can't do it. And then about halfway through, it's like, oh yeah, this is fine. I can do this, right? It's like a, death and resurrection or something in the course of this run. And that's a wonderful feeling. That's a tremendous feeling of accomplishment. And then you get all the benefits of being alone and in nature, the scenery changing and so forth. It's a wonderful thing.
Oh, dude, that's awesome. Well, thank you for that, because I was curious. I was just like, man.
Yeah.
So you have basically, in a roundabout way, got the runner's high, but for your point of view, or your feeling of the runner's high, was the beating, the not dying, the accomplishing the difficult task, and being able
Right.
to just breathe through that and feel that moment afterwards. So
Right. It's sort
that's
of the
awesome.
surprise of knowing that, oh my gosh, I can do this. I am doing something and it's not killing me, and I am enjoying it. I'm actually enjoying it. So to me, that was always wonderful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, okay. Can you put out like where people can get a hold of you, or find, if you want to be gotten a hold of, like where can
Sure.
people find you?
So I have, as you can see on the screen, I have an unusual name. So it's in terms of Googling, it's very easy to find me. I also have a website that is the same thing, the stuartvyse.com. I'm on all the usual social media things. I'm on the Twitter. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Instagram. So just Google my name and you'll find me.
Awesome. Thank you. And I appreciate you for coming on here. Is there anything any shout out you want to give? Like shout out to my family, shout out to this college, or
No,
anything?
I think we're good. I've
Right.
had a great conversation, Dave. Thanks very much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. I'm gonna go ahead and put you in the green room for a minute. I'm gonna close up shop, and we're gonna talk horror movies, because I'm
Okay,
interested.
great.
So,
All right.
all right.
Great.
So
Talk
thank
to you
you
later.
again, Dr. Stuart Vyse. By the way, everybody, it took me forever. It's Stuart, Stuart Vyse,
Correct.
Vyse, because a lot of people listen to this and don't actually watch it on the YouTube. So, all right, thank you, Dr. Stuart Vyse. Guys, this was awesome. I love y'all, and thank you for supporting me, but I don't care if you like the show or not. I loved this show. This was awesome. This was more than I could have ever asked for. Thank you, Dr. Vyse, for coming on here. I appreciate you for just bringing all your knowledge and information and your research. And guys, he told you where you can find him. And if not, by all means, look up that book, Believing in Magic, if you want to learn more about superstition, or if you're interested in how basically behavioral sciences works. He's one of the leading minds out there. So contact him, grab that book, take a read, even check out his magazine. Like, just go do your research, guys, because this banana in the boat business has to stop. On a positive note, there's this. I'm for place. And no one face. And there's never be for a few days. And them born and trees. I got some trees. And with that, guys,